Eicha, which is Lamentations, chapter 4, and it says, "How dim the gold has become, the fine gold changed, the stones of the set apart place are scattered at the head of every street." As we know, fine gold represents the kingdom of Yahweh. When it comes to here where it says the fine gold, is saying, the point is normally gold in general represents the kingdom of Yahweh. When it comes to gold and silver, it represents the few and the many. Also, there are two types of gold that are mentioned in scriptures. One that is special just because of the place it comes from, Ophir, and then another one that becomes special through going through fire. So that connects with also few and the many, in the sense that the many will have to go through death in order to be justified afterwards. In any case, since gold in general represents the kingdom, then the fact that it says here how dim the gold has become, that has happened because of the false doctrines, not because the kingdom of Yahweh has become dim, but because the doctrines have made it so in the minds and hearts of the people. When it comes to the kingdom, of course, it is talking also about, for instance, even we could add what is going on nowadays with inflation, even though, for instance, the dollar is not backed up by gold anymore, yet we see how inflation is going, making the dollar less valuable with time, and therefore other coins, or currency, pretty much the same, because they are setting everything up for the one world currency that they want to set up eventually. So in a sense, how dim the gold has become can be connected to how value has fallen when it comes to currency, I repeat, but mainly, of course, this refers to the spirit. How dim the gold has become, how the fine gold changed. Also, like I was saying, the people of Yahweh are like gold. Therefore, since they fell in false doctrines, idolatry, and so on and so forth, they changed. Then it says the stones of the set apart place. As we know, every person, well, every human body is a temple, for the Ruach of life is within it. And we are supposed to receive the Ruach HaKodesh, or the presence of Yahweh, to dwell within the temple. Also, like I have said, the 144,000 are represented by stones. Just like Mashiach is the cornerstone of the temple, the 144,000 are other stones, and the many are the utensils that are placed within the temple. So just like Yahweh scattered his people throughout the four corners of the earth, is as we are seeing here, the stones of the set apart place are scattered at the head of every street, right? The people, just like the temple was destroyed and therefore the stones were all over the place over there in Jerusalem, in every street, that represents how the people of Israel, who are like stones, remember when Yahushua was told to make certain people shut up because they were claiming, well, they were saying that he's Mashiach, that he came to save. So the Pharisees said that they should shut up. Yet Mashiach said, if they shut up, the stones will scream pretty much. Well, I actually wanted to talk about this verse as well. So let me mention just a couple verses. Well, in this case, look at how this one says. And do not think to say to yourselves, we have Abraham as our father. For I say to you that Elohim is able to raise up children to Abraham from these stones. Here it is. They would cry out, is how they translate it. So Luke 19:40. But he answered and said to them, let me read in context. And some of the Pharisees called to him from the crowd, Teacher, rebuke your disciples. But he answered and said to them, I tell you that if these should keep silent, the stones would immediately cry out. The stones would immediately cry out, right? So this has several connotations regarding what stones represent and how what was being said there had to be said. So if they shut up, the stones would cry out, the stones would speak. In Judaism, when they refer to reincarnation, it is said that the lowest level in which a soul can reincarnate is within a stone, because they say there are four worlds, as we know: Atzilut, emanation; Beriyah, creation; Yetzirah, formation; and Aziyah, action. Those four also connect, obviously, with the four letters of the name of Yahweh, the four corners of the earth, but also the four elements, and also the four worlds, I guess, within this reality, which would be the mineral, vegetable, animal, and then human. So the souls have to go through the minerals, then the vegetables, then the animal, and then human. And that's kind of how they would refer to when it comes to this verse. Obviously, they don't accept the new covenant, but my point is, when we see in scripture that they would place stones as witnesses, or hear Mashiach saying that they would speak. But other than that, like I mentioned in this verse, look how it says, do not think to say to yourselves, we have Abraham as our father, for I say to you that Elohim is able to raise up children to Abraham from these stones. Here, I'm going to write it here. Look, this is very interesting. I believe at least this word, as you know, means son, right? Ben. If we, turn this nun suffix or last nun into a regular nun, would be this. That's still son, just because of the nun like this, it doesn't translate it correctly. But then we have the yud and the mem, so that would be children or boys, sons, right? Banim. So when Mashiach was saying, do not claim that you have Abraham as a father, because I tell you that Yahweh could bring children, boys, from Abraham, from these stones. He was also making a connection with those two words in Hebrew. And also, that's also an interesting point, because that would be one of the many signs that the new covenant was written in Hebrew, because this that I'm about to show doesn't happen in Greek. So if it doesn't happen in Greek, then that wouldn't make sense when it was written. Yet in Hebrew makes all the sense in the world, because if you add an aleph, we have stones. Interestingly enough, Yahushua is the aleph. Yahushua is the first, as you see here. The first. He is the one who gives us the strength. He's the only begotten son. So Mashiach connected with us, the children of Yahweh, or Abraham, those through the faith, become stones in the temple. So our union with Mashiach makes us stones. So that's why he said, do not claim you are children of Abraham, or that will save you, because I tell you that Yahweh can bring boys or children from the stones, being Mashiach the Aleph and us the Banim. All right. So now, seeing here the stones, go to the first verse. Here it is. Avnei. In this case, it says Avnei is missing a letter mem, because that's how it works when it is connected to another word. The mem has to go away. So that's why you see the dash right here. But my point is, here's the word. This would be sons. Remember when it says the children of Elohim, it doesn't say Banim Elohim, it says Benei Elohim. You may have heard it from all the teachers or even myself. When scripture says the sons of Elohim, it is written Benei Elohim, because the mem, it is a rule in Hebrew, has to go away when it is in a construct form, with another word. In this case, it is talking about the set apart stones. So that's why Avnei Kodesh. Avnei Kodesh would be what we have here. But here we have Benei. So it will be the children who are set apart, or the children of the set apart one. Going back, how dim the gold has become, the fine gold changed. The stones of the street of the set apart place are scattered at the head of every street. The precious sons of Sion. So you see how it confirms what we were talking about? Because after talking about the stones, now it talks about the sons. So look how it says, B'nai Sion. B'nai Sion, the sons of Sion, after saying Avnei Kodesh, right? So you see the B'nai right here, as in here. So obviously the writer, Yahweh, through the writer, is showing that connection so that we may understand how it would be interpreted and fulfilled spiritually by the people of Yahweh, the sons of Sion, being scattered across the entire world. The precious sons of Sion, who were weighed against fine gold. Once again, confirming how when he was talking about the gold, he was talking about his people, the best of his people, how they have been reckoned as clay pots, the work of the hands of the potter. So Yahweh made us to be as gold, precious as gold in this reality. But because of sins, they became as simple clay pots, right? In the sense that obviously we are made of clay. So every human would be a clay pot. But through Mashiach, we are supposed to be as gold because of the apostasy, disobedience, and everything. This happened. The precious sons of Sion who were weighed against fine gold, how they have been reckoned as clay pots, the work of the hands of the potter. Even jackals have presented their breasts. They have nursed their young. The daughter of my people has become as cruel as ostriches in the wilderness. Here where it says, you see, Gam Tanin. They also have Tanim. This sometimes has to do with how the priest would pronounce it and then how it was written. In this case, there's a difference of a letter, Nun, and a Mem, like the letter N and the letter M, the equivalent at least. So my point, at least with this, is that you see how they translate jackals, but we have Tanin. If you bring that to translator, let's see what it says, because it might be wrong also. They write alligator. So is it a jackal or an alligator or a crocodile, right? But it says Tanin. So they don't agree. So if we go to the concordance, we will see that it is something much bigger than both of those creatures. And because of the fact that we are taught lies nowadays in school, they had to translate it differently because it wouldn't make sense with the idea of reality nowadays. So Lamentations 4, you see, they write monsters. So is it a crocodile? Is it a monster, or is it a jackal? If we go deeper into the actual concordance, we see that Tanin means dragon. It is a dragon. So look how here it adds another one, and this is beautiful. Dragon or dinosaur. Also, we see here how they also write it with a mem sometimes, as in Ezekiel 29. So Tanim sometimes. Tanin is the most common though. So you see how they say here, a monster set apart, sea serpent or jackal. Dragon, sea monster, serpent, whale. So they add these ones because they are big. The whale is a sea creature, which is huge. But here it clearly says it is a dragon. Originally, it's a dragon. But since they say that dragons are a thing of mythology, they decided to write something else instead. But as the concordance itself is telling us, a dragon is a dinosaur. Dinosaur is a word that they gave to dragons like a couple hundred years ago. In the 1800s, pretty much, is when they made up the word dinosaur to use instead of dragon, so that they would make a separation between the dragons of mythology, as they would say, fantasy, and the dinosaurs, which they would claim lived millions of years ago. However, scriptures tell us that the dragons were created on the fifth day of creation, so they were with humans, for humans were made on the sixth day of creation. And we see the behemoth, Leviathan, the reem, and the unicorn in the scriptures. Real creatures, huge creatures. So a dragon is a dinosaur originally. A tanin is a dinosaur. So it makes more sense. Even the dinosaurs or the dragons have presented their breasts, saying even dragons, even monsters have love for their children. Yet the daughter of Sion did not. So even dragons have presented their breasts. They have nursed their young. The daughter of my people has become as cruel as ostriches in the wilderness. As ostriches in the wilderness. Here, dinosaurs are in scriptures. They lived with men, and there is proof, there's evidence of that, but the system has destroyed most of the evidence or hid the rest. Like I have also said, I have a picture of the of evidence of how dinosaurs walk with humans. The shape of the foot of a dinosaur next to that of a human, a fossil pretty much, in which you can see both a human and a dragon or a dinosaur. I'm forgetting the word, but it's very important. But anyway, so dragons walk with men. Eventually, men decided to fool the rest, and they made two words for the same creature in order to claim one is mythology and fantasy, while the other lived millions of years ago, in order to hide true history in which they lived with men. If we go back, then it says like ostriches. In this case, they do write ostriches. Would be the word yain, an ostrich. The main point here is that it is an unclean animal. So even dragons have presented their breasts. They have nursed their young. The daughter of my people has become as cruel as ostriches in the wilderness. So it became like an impure animal. Started acting like an animal, and not only an animal, one that is not set apart, an unclean animal. As we know, the Torah is what makes us human. When a person goes against the Torah, that person starts acting like an animal. And there are many types of animals, just like there are many ways in which humans can behave. The tongue of the infant has clung to the roof of its mouth for thirst. Children asked for bread. No one breaks it for them. So as we know, well, this Yahweh was speaking about the time when Babylon entered and destroyed the temple and exiled the people. This also obviously connects with our time. And as we know, in the third seal of Revelation, there will be hunger. a famine throughout the world. The tongue of the infant has clung to the roof of its mouth for thirst, right? Just like we just saw that even though dinosaurs present their breasts to their young, the daughter of my people is cruel. And that's why the tongue of the infant has clung to the roof of its mouth for thirst. Children ask for bread, no one breaks it for them. This is interesting as well. Yahushua came to break bread with his disciples, being that bread his own flesh, which was killed on the cross. Through that death, through his death, we got life, right? So the breaking of bread represents the sacrifice of Mashiach, who is the bread of life, the heavenly bread, the manna. Also, we were speaking about children as being the people of Israel, right? Now in our time, obviously, this generation, no matter how old you may be, you would be super young compared to the previous generations. If they kept living, they would be super old. So in a way, we are children in terms of human history, right? So nowadays, the children of Yahweh, they are asking for the bread of life. They are asking for food for their soul, but no one is breaking the bread for them. No one is giving them the teaching. Only Yahweh through his chosen, pretty much as he will do through the two witnesses and the 144,000. So Mashiach sends the last pretty much to break bread among the 144,000. And as we know, wisdom is like when you receive a flash of, well, an idea. Let's say you receive an idea to do something, you get the whole block of idea, which then you have to separate or break into smaller parts in order to understand how to get it together, how to bring it to actualization, to make it manifest from your thought to reality. So wisdom is the whole idea, and then understanding is breaking that idea in parts. Yahushua brought chokmah, he brought the wisdom. The last brings the understanding. So Yahushua is the bread, and we could say the last comes to break it. As in, when you use the term break it down, when you need to break it down for somebody, right? You are trying to explain everything in the best way. So children asked for bread, no one breaks it for them. Sadly, they are seeking the teaching, but the world is not giving it to them, and it won't, right? The false congregation, the church, the great whore of Babylon will give them the wine of the fornication, will give them lies, idolatry. They have no bread, they have no milk, right? For it's talking about children who are not receiving their food, or in this case, well, I said milk, right? Because it was mentioning how dinosaurs have presented their breasts. Milk in the spiritual sense represents the word of Yahweh, meaning the name of Mashiach, the beginning, the key of knowledge. Just like when you were born, the first thing you will eat is milk for a while, and then you get to grow enough in order to eat other stuff. Then you get teeth, and you're able to break the food in your mouth, which would represent, once again, understanding, right? So we have the tongue of the infant has clung to the roof of its mouth for thirst, because people are not receiving the word of Yahweh. They are not receiving neither the milk, which is the word of Yahweh, nor the water of life, right? Mashiach himself. Children ask for bread, no one breaks it for them. Remember how Mashiach said, if you being evil can give good gifts to your children, right? How much more can Yahweh, right? When he referred to, if a child asks for a piece of bread, would you give him a stone? Obviously not. But it's interesting that when Mashiach was in the desert, Satan appeared and said, turn that stone into bread. So Satan wanted to give him stones as bread, right? Which is pretty much what he was referring to when he spoke about the evil of men. Now we see the evil in Satan tempting Mashiach to turn stone into bread, which is what, in a way, he did by turning us, who had a heart of stone, into a part of him who is the bread of life, right? And we receive a new heart with the commandments written on them. Interestingly enough, like the 2 pieces of bread that one would offer in Shavuot that represented 2 tablets with the 10 commandments. Also, the fact that he's saying here that they ask for bread and no one breaks it for them shows the evil of men in the end times. And even in that time, for Mashiach was speaking about how you being evil can do good things. Now he's saying that they are not even giving bread to those children asking for it. Those who ate delicacies have been laid waste in the streets. Those who were brought up in scarlet have embraced dunghills, right? As in, many people who nowadays have a lot of luxuries, they will lose them. They will see themselves as they never expected. And obviously it will happen with those who are wicked, who have stolen everything they have from the people. But also, look how it says brought up in scarlet. Scarlet represents royalty, but we see scarlet in scriptures many times mentioned because of its color, connecting it to sin. White as being pure, scarlet sinful. That's why the great whore of Babylon is covered in scarlet, purple, precious stones, gold and silver. Scarlet being one of the colors covering the great whore of Babylon. Like I said, in the negative, it represents sin. So we could say those who were brought up in sin have embraced dunghills. They were brought up in sin, just like I mentioned, they were brought up as royalty. Obviously, the royalty of this world, which is wicked, right? The leaders of this world. And the crookedness of the daughter of my people is greater than the punishment of the sin of Sodom. This is huge for several reasons. The main one, obviously, that it is amazing that the Almighty is telling us that Israel got to be worse than Sodom and Gomorrah. It is amazing because if Yahweh did what he did to Sodom and Gomorrah, then what is he going to do now, right? And if we add to that, that he has given the world thousands of years after Sodom and Gomorrah, and the world did not understand or learn from the example, that means the punishment will be greater. And that's why it is written that Mashiach said, if the people of Sodom and Gomorrah would have seen what the Pharisees saw, they would have repented. So imagine the punishment that will come for them, the Pharisees, in Judgment Day, as well as for nowadays the wicked who control this world. Also, well, the crookedness connects with obviously the apostasy. We are supposed to go through the way of Yahweh, yet they want to go this way and that way and this way and then that way. The crookedness of the daughter of my people is greater than the punishment of the sin of Sodom, which was overthrown in a moment, and no hands were wrung over her. Another important detail here that we need to understand, I believe it is key prophetically. And I want to make sure you understand me in this point, because this is a argument that will be needed when people claim that Jerusalem is the great whore. If we go to Revelation 11, which is when it talks about the 2 witnesses, we see that it says, and when they had entered their witness, the beast coming out of the pit of the deep shall fight against them and overcome them and kill them. So Abaddon will use the beast, the leader of the world at the moment, to kill the two witnesses. And their dead bodies lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom, or Sodom, right? As you see here, normally known as Sodom. The great city, which is spiritually called Sodom. We just saw here that it said, and the crookedness of the daughter of my people is greater than the punishment of the sin of Sodom. And now, this is not the only verse where this happens. I'm just taking advantage of the fact that we're reading this one, right? But it is in several parts of scripture, several prophecies, in which Yahweh compares Jerusalem to Sodom and Israel to Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah, like Yehuda and Israel, sadly. In this case, Jerusalem as the city. So it says, and their dead bodies lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Mizraim, right? Sodom and Egypt, where also our sovereign was impaled. So it's talking about Jerusalem. Scripture itself is telling us it is like Sodom and Mizraim. Then later on, we have the great whore of Babel, which Peter tells us in his letters that is Rome. So the great whore of Babel, Rome. Sodom and Mizraim, Jerusalem, where also our sovereign was impaled. So going back. And the crookedness of the daughter of my people is greater than the punishment of the sin of Sodom, which was overthrown in a moment, and no hands were wrung over her. Her Nazarites were brighter than snow and whiter than milk, more ruddy in body than rubies. They're cut like sapphire. So they were special, the Nazarites, right? Those who kept the vow of not cutting their hair, not drinking wine or eating anything that had to do with grapes, pretty much, and not touching anything that is that has died. So not touching any corpses, not drinking any alcohol or wine, strong drink, and not cutting the hair. So through that, they would gain a lot of, well, like it is saying here, brightness spiritually. Her Nazarites were brighter than snow, right? Like I was saying earlier, red represents sin, white represents purity. So they were pure. They were brighter than snow and whiter than milk. Like I mentioned, milk represents the word of Yahweh. More ruddy in body than rubies. In this case, referring to, obviously we know this referring to red color, but it is mentioned in a positive sense, as in a child when it's just born, and also rubies, which are precious stones, which connect also with one of the tribes that was represented by the that stone. We also remember that King David was red. He had red hair like Esau, but David was the positive, while Esau represents the negative of that color. And they're cut like sapphire, which connects with the throne of Yahweh, the heavens, which are like sapphire. So they were special. The Nazarites were pure, set apart, innocent, precious, heavenly, pretty much what it's saying in this verse. Yet it says in the next one, their appearance has become blacker than soot. They have become unrecognized in the streets. Their skin has shriveled on their bones. It has become dry. It has become dry. It has become as wood. If it has become dry, it has become as wood. It means they are ready to become fuel for the fire of the end times, the punishment. Also, look how it kind of mentions the opposite of everything that it mentioned previously. They were brighter than snow and whiter than milk. Now they are blacker than soot. They are unrecognized. Their skin has shriveled on their bones. Bones are white, just like milk, right? But in this case, it's referring to something negative. It has become dry. Obviously, snow is the opposite of, in this case, the dryness that it is referring to, for they are as wood that is about to fall in the fire. They are like wood, not like a precious stone anymore. Better off were those pierced by the sword than those pierced by hunger. It is said that the worst way to die is by hunger. The most painful, for it takes a long time. So that's why it is clear that it's better off were those pierced by the sword than those pierced by hunger. At least those pierced by the sword died in a moment, while those pierced by hunger took a long time and suffered a lot throughout that time. For these pine away, pierced through for lack of the fruits of the field. Better off were those pierced by the sword than those pierced by hunger, for these pine away, pierced through for lack of the fruits of the field. They were pierced by not having food, not by a sword, but by the lack of food, because the land would not give it to them. Through for these pine away, pierced through for lack of the fruits of the field. As we know, we are trees and we are supposed to give good fruit. If not, we are cut and become like wood for the fire, like the previous verse mentioned. So pierced through for lack of the fruits of the field. In the literal sense, is referring to how they died of hunger because they didn't get literal food. But in the spiritual, how for not giving fruit, for not bringing the commandments to fulfillment, they will be pierced by hunger. And we could even say hunger for the word of Yahweh. They will eventually die for not knowing the Most High through the way that he gave us to know him, which is the scriptures and obviously the Messiah. The hands of the compassionate women have boiled their own children. This is unbelievable and incredibly sad, of course. But it is a reality, and that's why it is written. And if it happened back in that time, you can be sure it will happen in our time, since it is the worst of all times in human history. Thankfully, Yahweh will be, as he is, good with his own, and he will take care of the chosen few as he promised. But we will see the world crumbling around us. And even people who were compassionate will do things like this. So that's the amazing part. Imagine if those women who were so compassionate boiled their own children. We have no idea of how the women who are not compassionate will act, right? And when I say women, it also refers to groups of people, nations, congregations. The hands of the compassionate women have boiled their own children. They became food for them in the destruction of the daughter of my people. So the hunger was such that they dared to eat their own children. They became food for them in the destruction of the daughter of my people. And Like I said, I cannot imagine this, seeing it, even less doing it, of course. Yet, of course, we also must ask Yahweh not to put us in any test alike. For as we can see in the same words of the Most High, it says, the compassionate women. So may Yahweh protect us from everything, and may He always give us the food that we may need, and obviously also our children, our loved ones. The hands of the compassionate women have boiled their own children. They became food for them in the destruction of the daughter of my people. Yahweh has completed his wrath. Well, thankfully, because that previous verse was huge and very sad. So we can see how that is kind of like a limit when it comes to the wickedness that will be experienced. For Yahweh will put a limit to all the destruction eventually, and that's when his wrath will be over and he won't get mad, angry ever again, as he promised also. Yahweh has completed his wrath. He has poured out his burning displeasure, and he kindled a fire in Sion, and it consumed her foundations. This is interesting because Yahweh was speaking in a literal way, for that actually happened. There was a fire that destroyed the temple. But in a spiritual sense, we know how Mashiach came and he said, do not think that I came to bring peace. I came to start a fire, right? So to kindle a fire. So we have here that it says, and he kindled a fire, which he did through Mashiach in Sion, where Mashiach manifested. And it consumed her foundations. When they killed Mashiach, that brought the destruction of the temple and Jerusalem in the year 70. Obviously, this also refers to the end times when the fire will destroy this earth, just like the water destroyed the earth during the time of Noah. For Yahushua said, the days of the Son of Man will be like the days of Noah. Verse 12. The sovereigns of the earth did not believe, nor any of the inhabitants of the world, that an adversary, an enemy, would enter the gates of Jerusalem. The sovereigns of the earth did not believe, just like nowadays. Obviously, this is referring once again to that time when they were so secure and sure that nothing would happen, and then Nebuchadnezzar entered and destroyed everything. Nowadays, in a spiritual sense, the world, mainly the sovereigns of the earth, do not believe in Yahweh. They do not believe in his power. They don't believe in his judgment. They believe in their own strength. They believe in Satan as their king and God. So the sovereigns of the earth did not believe. As we know, Mashiach came, they did not accept him. Now he sends his messenger, the last, and they won't accept him, and they won't believe no matter how much they hear. The sovereigns of the earth did not believe, nor any of the inhabitants of the world. For Mashiach said, when the Son of Man manifests, will he find faith in the world? And that was a rhetorical question, meaning no. So when the last, as the Son of Man, appears in the world, nobody in the world will believe him. Only 144,000. 144,000 is a number that it would be 0.02% of the amount of people nowadays. So that's pretty much nobody. And even if we say no, but it's 144,000 people, that's enough. That's a lot of people. They are all the body of Mashiach, for they are the temple. So they are one person. The body of the last, which is the head in this case, all of them, the body for the Ruach of Mashiach. So the two witnesses with the 144,000, they represent one person. And that is the body of Mashiach himself. For Paul said to us, for us to live is Mashiach, and to die is to gain, right, eternal life. So the sovereigns of the earth did not believe, nor any of the inhabitants of the world, that an adversary, an enemy, would enter the gates of Jerusalem. They think they have enough power to protect themselves. They don't understand that the one who will go there and appear as what they will claim to be Mashiach will actually be the destroyer, the one who will bring desolation to Jerusalem and the rest of the world. So they don't understand that whom they will see as the savior will actually be the adversary, an enemy. It's verse 12, right? Tsar ve'oyed, adversary and enemy. As I always mention when I see this word right here, Tsar connects with Sur, which is a name that is used for Lucifer, Hillel, for he claims to be a rock. Sur means a rock. Here we have Tsar, which means adversary, but it's the same root as Sur. And then we have Oyeb, which is enemy. And the name actually could be rearranged to be Job, which connects with obviously the book of Job. And that story connects with the last, just like Mashiach is the true rock, the cornerstone. So we have Mashiach and his opposite, which would be the adversary. And then the last as Job and his opposite, which would be the enemy. Adversary and enemy in contrast with Mashiach and the prophet. And in the sense of how this can connect with two different entities, obviously, like I mentioned, Tsar would be Hillel. Ve'oyeb could connect with Azazel, who comes out of the bottomless pit, as we just read in, well, part of it in Revelation 11. So now verse 12, the sovereigns of the earth did not believe, nor any of the inhabitants of the world, that an adversary, an enemy would enter the gates of Jerusalem. So like I said, on the one hand, they are expecting Messiah, and when they accept someone as such, they will realize is the actual adversary. Also, they believe they are so protected, so they don't believe, they have no clue of the destruction that is approaching Jerusalem. Right after the death of the two witnesses, it will get worse than ever. In fact, there will be a great earthquake in Jerusalem that will kill 7,000 people right after the two witnesses resurrect 3.5 days after they died. So the sovereigns of the earth did not believe, nor any of the inhabitants of the world, that an adversary and enemy would enter the gates of Jerusalem. It was because of the sins of her prophets. Obviously, it's not referring to Yeshayahu, to Yirmiyahu, to the true prophets, the good prophets. It is talking about the false prophets, those who would bring lies to the people, claiming they were secure, claiming they were doing everything good according to the Torah, when they were actually following commandments of men, doctrines of demons. It was because of the sins of her prophets, the crookedness of her priests, who shed in her midst the blood of the righteous. The prophet or the priest didn't have to kill a person to shed the blood of the righteous. With teaching them a wrong doctrine, they are pretty much killing them, right? Because the true doctrine is food for our soul. The false doctrine is poison. So it will kill the person. It will kill his soul. But also, they dared, the priest, kill Mashiach, the most righteous of all. So it was because of the sins of her prophets, the crookedness of her priests, who shed in her midst the blood of the righteous, right? The priests, the Pharisees, shed in the midst of Jerusalem, the blood of Mashiach, the righteous. And they will do the same with the two witnesses, just like they did with the prophets. Just in case it is saying tzaddikim, when it's saying righteous, so it is the plural, tzaddikim, the blood of the righteous ones. Like I mentioned, not only did they kill Mashiach, they will kill the two witnesses, just like they killed several martyrs across, history. They staggered blind in the streets. Remember that Samael means the blind mighty one. The blindness of the mighty one, they also translate it as the poison of the mighty one. So Samael is the entity that blinds people in order for them to either not believe that Yahweh is, or in order to believe that he is worshipped through stones, through wood, through gold, etc. That's why they become blind, because they become like their idols who have eyes but cannot see, ears but cannot hear, etc. They staggered blind in the streets. That is because of idolatry, because of the false Elohim which they praise. They have defiled themselves with blood, right? Through killing, either through, I repeat, false doctrines, which would lead to being killed or kill, or actually just dying and going to hell, if that is the case, which would be worse than just dying, of course. But also, for instance, doctrines like the one that they follow in Islam, that doctrine has made a lot of people kill themselves and kill a lot of people with them. So that's my point regarding how a false doctrine can lead others to kill. In fact, Yahushua said that there will be people killing, and not only Muslims, that there will be people killing others like prophets and righteous, thinking that they were doing a service for the Most High, which is what they actually did with Mashiach as well. They thought that he was, well, depending on the person, but there were some who just, they were envious and they just wanted to get rid of him. Others who thought he was actually filled with demons. They thought he was going against the Torah, so they decided to kill him, thinking that that was the good that they had to do for the people. They staggered blind in the streets. They have defiled themselves with blood, so that no one was able to touch their garments. Remember that garments also represent body. Just like the garments for the body, so is the body for the soul. So their corpses will be defiled because of so much sin within them. Once they die, they have defiled themselves with blood. Remember, once again, blood is red, like the connection with sin, so that no one was able to touch their garments. And since I already mentioned their blindness, the blood and garments, in scripture we see how the cloth that women would use for their period would represent idolatry. So we see another connection here. They staggered blind in the streets, idolatry. They have defiled themselves with blood, as in the period, so that no one was able to touch their garments. And I made that connection because of the idolatry, and because when a woman is in her period, according to the letter, whatever she may touch or where she may sit is defiled, impure. So and one of the reasons, right, is because when the woman is on her period, she cannot have children. So just like in other times, she represents life itself, for she came from Chava, whose name means the mother of the living. When a woman is in her period, the blood within her represents the opposite, death. So that's why it is unclean and everything else that has to do with that. So they shouted at them, away, unclean, away, away, touch not. So once again, connecting it with what I just mentioned as well, they did rebuke the people. That is why we are crying out, Yahweh, Yahushua. Yeah, exactly. They rebuked. Now we are crying out. Good point, brother. They shouted at them, away, unclean, away, away, touch not. When they fled and staggered, they said among the nations, they shall stay no longer. They said among the nations, they shall stay no longer. So like I said, they were unclean because of their sins, because of their punishment, just like nowadays it is being fulfilled because of the apostasy. Just like a person, like in the letter, would eat something and become unclean. For instance, nowadays people eat a false doctrine and become unclean because the doctrine that they are eating are as pigs or vultures or other animals that, according to the letter, aren't supposed to be eaten. The face of Yahweh scattered them. The face of Yahweh scattered them. He no longer regards them. They showed no respect for the priests, no favor to the elders. Here, the face of Yahweh scattered them. Interesting, because you know how when we have the favor of Yahweh, Yahweh is looking at us with a happy face. But if we do evil, he turns his face from us. And that's when we fall in affliction and all types of evil. So that's why the face of Yahweh scattered them, in the sense that he turned the face from them. So all evil came to the people of Yahweh. He no longer regards them. It's like ignoring them. They showed no respect for the priest, no favor to the elders. So that's why they don't deserve that protection, because they didn't respect the priests. Obviously, he's not talking about the evil priests. Yahweh tells us to expose evil, but he also tells us to be respectful of elders, to honor father and mother, etc. So a lot of people, and we've talked about it a lot in this congregation as well because of several examples, some people, because of the evil that is found in false congregations, false teachers, they come out of those false congregations, which is great, but then they do not want to have a priest any longer. They don't want to have a teacher. They want to learn by themselves. And obviously, anybody can learn by themselves, but Yahweh established a congregation, leaders, ministries, positions, a hierarchy. So we must respect that if we want to be part of the kingdom. Because if Yahweh sees that you are faithful in things that are little, he will put you over things that are big, huge, important, special. So he tests us through the way we act, and if he sees that we are acting in a good way, he will put us in a better position. Like we are seeing here, the chapter just mentioned evil priests, right? They will be punished. But now it is mentioned that the people will be punished for not respecting the priests, right? So, like I was saying, some people come out because of evil priests. They come out of a congregation or religion, and then they say, I will not follow anything anymore. I won't be part of anything. I will learn by myself. So they reject the congregation, the true congregation. Yahweh tells us that the Ruach teaches us all things, but it also says, do not stop congregating. So one has to go with the other. We need to congregate to learn with each other, from each other, and there must be respect amongst the brethren, love for the neighbor, and respect for the leader that the Almighty made place. So the fact that there are evil priests, evil prophets, false prophets is not an excuse to not congregate. It's pretty much what I'm trying to say. It's not an excuse to do not respect a teacher as a teacher or as a priest or whatever the ministry may be. The face of Yahweh scattered them. He no longer regards them. They showed no respect for the priests, no favor to the elders. As I have mentioned, in Judaism, they kind of fall into idolatry when it comes to the rabbis. So it is an extreme, of course. but they do talk a lot about, and it is true because we're seeing it here, about the blessing that comes to a person for respecting his teachers. And I'm not saying it just because here I am teaching, not at all. That's not the point. Is because of many things I have seen. In fact, I was talking to Omar about a certain person that kind of displays that, uh, right, in the email that we talked about. And he's not the only person that has showed those signs, but it is interesting to see life, right? How they react, how they answer, what they think about others, and what they think about themselves. And it is not nice. So you see that there's no love in there, right? And as we know, you can do anything, you can give your life for the people, you can give all your riches to the people, to the poor people, but if you do not have love, you're nothing. You're doing nothing. No matter if you have all the knowledge, all the understanding of scriptures, if you do not have love, you're worth nothing. And love will show respect. Love will show favor. Love will show understanding, will be patient, right? But there are people who do not show patience. They do not respect. They don't show favor. So where's the love? Without that love, there's no fulfillment of commandments. The face of Yahweh scattered them. He no longer regards them. They showed no respect for the priests, no favor to the elders. That's right, Yahweh. Love and humility. And it is so wonderful, like in every way, but for me, especially, I mean, because I'm the one saying it right now, that to see you guys who are strong men, and I see your faces and everything, and you look like some of you, like for instance, brother Yahoo who just said that, right? He was in gangs and everything. If I'm not mistaken, Omar as well, at some point in life, right? Things that men would do to feel more manly, right? In a way. In actuality, it was to be part of a family, but things got mixed up, right? But my point is that it is so wonderful for me to see you guys looking all rough and, manly as can be, but at the same time, not being ashamed to show love, to say, I love you, to be humble, right? Because normally people or men think that to be a man is not to show love, not to say it. Like you can show it like this, but don't say it because that makes you weird, right? There are a lot of people who are ashamed of showing love. I remember when I started the congregation, there was a brother who came out of a very, very, very bad neighborhood. In fact, we had to go and get him from the neighborhood because there were some people who wanted to get him first. So they wanted to kill him pretty much. So he called me. We went to get him. He was coming from a very bad neighborhood, very difficult life. He had many things that he told me later on, but one day I wanted to hug him, right? So when we just started the ministry, I went close and I wanted to hug him. And he was like, oh, what were you doing? Like he felt gay pretty much because I wanted to hug him. And I was like, come on, like for real. So, but he was part of that falsehood of the world, right? And a bunch of other traumas or whatever. So fast forward to like the event that we had on Sunday. He went there, thankfully, and he was another person. Even though I've seen him many times in the middle, but now that I'm telling the story, in the beginning, he felt so weird when I tried to hug him that I said, okay, I won't hug him ever again because I made him feel so uncomfortable. But now he's hugging everybody, right? And he's showing so much love, and it's like another person. So it is so wonderful to see that coming from the Ruach. And like I said, to see you guys all manly and everything and being so sure about who you are and not being afraid at all to show love and say it. For a lot of people do have issues with that. But anyways, I'll continue. They showed no respect for the priest, no favor to the elders. While we exist, Our eyes are consumed, watching vainly for our help. In our watchtower, we watched for a nation that could not save. Sadly, most people don't expect Yahweh to save them. For instance, people in the United States, being the United States such a powerful nation in history in the last couple 100 years, those who live in the United States have felt very securely by what the United States can do to other countries, or how it can defend itself, or it could back in the day. When it comes to other countries, like third world countries, they tend to hope and expect other countries like the United States to help them, or depending on what country that is, they may expect help from Russia or something like that, instead of expecting it from the Most High Creator. And that is obviously an issue, because that is trusting men, and that is a curse, as Scripture says, right? Curse is the man who trusts in a man and who puts his trust in his own strength. So while we exist, our eyes are consumed, watching vainly for our help. Why? Because they are watching the wrong way. They are watching for men to save them, when only Yahweh can save them. Our eyes are consumed, pretty much looking for that which will never come. That's why they will be consumed. Also because they look unto idols. So they lose their sight, spiritual sight. So if they lost their spiritual sight, the only thing they can do is watch vainly for a help that will not manifest. Even the rapture, for instance, that false doctrine known as the rapture, I always mention, right, we have the harvest. Scripture talks about the harvest. It is a fact that it will happen, but it won't happen as they explain it when it comes to the doctrine of the rapture. So in a way, they are watching vainly for a help that will not come. In our watchtower, we watch for a nation that could not save. They have hunted our steps from going in our streets. They have hunted our steps from going in our streets. Our end was near. Our days were completed. Our end was near. Our days were completed, for our end had come, as it is about to manifest for this world. Our end was near. Our days were completed, for our end had come. Our pursuers were swifter than the eagles of the heavens. The eagles of the heavens represent the angels. Mainly, well, in this case would be fallen angels. Also, and I say mainly fallen angels because eagles were unclean animals. Also, eagles were used by every nation that has been an enemy of Israel throughout history. The Amalekites, Rome, the Nazis, and others. Interestingly enough, it is also the one used by the United States. Our pursuers were swifter than the eagles of the heavens. They came hotly after us on the mountains and lay in wait for us in the wilderness. Remember that when the abomination of desolation manifests, who will manifest from the heavens as an eagle, he will go after those who reject the beast and the mark of the beast. And that is what Mashiach said, flee to the mountains, flee to the wilderness. The beast will try to find them, but Yahweh will save them before he can get them when it comes to the chosen few. Yet those who are like the wife of Lot will be as salt. Not literally this time, in the sense that they will die. They came hotly after us on the mountains and laying wait for us in the wilderness. The breath of our nostrils, the anointed of Yahweh, was caught in their pits, in whose shadow we had thought to live among the nations. It is very interesting. Obviously, the anointed of Yahweh can refer to the king and to the priest, but it mainly refers to Yahushua HaMashiach, or even the last who is also anointed. Verse 20, Ruach Afeinu, the spirit of our noses, the Mashiach of Yahweh. You see right there, the Ruach, the life that we breathe, is Mashiach himself, because for us to live is Mashiach. So Ruach Afeinu, well, Apenu, my bad. Ruach Apenu, Mashiach Yahweh, the Messiah of Yahweh. And I know you guys know already, but let me just put it here so that you can see clearly. Oh no, sadly, right? They write Lord, but instead of Yahweh here. But you see how it is Messiah, the Messiah of Yahweh. So this is very interesting for several reasons. So let me go back. Our pursuers were swifter than the eagles. Already read that. The breath of our nostrils. This is Ruach, which is better, I guess, if we understand that it says Ruach, not just breath. It's talking about the spirit. The Ruach of our nostrils, the anointed of Yahweh. Yahushua, we can see how this verse is telling us that Yahushua HaMashiach is the life. Because the Ruach of our nostrils is the anointed of Yahweh. He is our life. But then it says, the breath of our nostrils, the anointed of Yahweh, was caught in their pits. Mashiach came and they killed him. In whose shadow we had thought to live among the nations. They were expecting for Mashiach to come and be able to live in his shadow forever, ruling all the nations. But Mashiach came, and what did they do? They killed him. So what did the Jewish people did after? They claimed that he was not the Mashiach because they were not able to live under his shadow among the nations. But the verse in Lamentations is telling us that's what it would happen. He came, he is the life, but they killed him. So 2,000 years have passed, and we're still among the nations, scattered. And that makes the Jewish people claim that Yahushua is not the Messiah. But it was written that that is what would happen. So the breath of our nostrils, the anointed of Yahweh, was caught in their pits, in whose shadow we had thought to live among the nations. Rejoice and be glad, O daughter of Edom. Daughter of Edom, which remember that Edom is Esau. He has two names, just like Yaakov and Israel. Edom, Esau, because it's separated in two, just like Yaakov and Israel separated in two, the few and the many, or Yehudah and Israel, right? The tribes of the north and the tribes of the south. Also, Edom separated in two, Esau and Edom, as the false Jewish, or the false Yahudim, who claim to be Jewish, and the Roman people. The Roman Empire came from Esau. And there was a great amount of people from Edom, Edomites, who were converted to Judaism before Mashiach came. About 150 years before Mashiach came, a bunch of Edomites were turned into Yahudim. And they remained so, and eventually they became the Jewish people, meaning most of those who claim to be Jewish are actually descendants of Edom, according even to the Jewish encyclopedia. Well, one of them. I haven't read them all. So, rejoice and be glad, O daughter of Edom. Look how it's saying that right after these. After this verse. Who decided to kill Mashiach? The Jewish people, the false Yahudim. For Mashiach told them, you are not sons of Abraham, you're sons of Satan. And who ended up executing Mashiach? The Romans. So the two parts of Edom were the ones who decided to kill the anointed of Yahweh. So look how right after saying, was cut in their pits, it mentions, rejoice and be glad, of daughter of Edom, you who dwell in the land of Uz, the land of power. The cup is to pass over to you too. The cup is to pass over to you too, so that you become drunk and make yourself naked. Remember, Mashiach said, pass the cup, right? He had to drink it and then pass it. So he drank when he died. Then he's going to pass it to the two witnesses who will die. Interestingly enough, one of the two witnesses comes from Edom, as Isaiah 63 says. So in a way that fulfills, because Yahushua the anointed came and they killed him, drinking the cup. Then he passed the cup to the last, who comes from Edom, and he has to drink the cup as well. So in a way, verse 20 and 21 refer to the death of the first and the death of the last. But not only that, we could also say that right after the two witnesses have died, they will pass the cup to Edom itself. Because remember that when the two witnesses die, the harvest happens. The many are the grapes that are thrown in the winepress of the wrath. And then 7 cups will be filled with that blood of the innocent, and that will be poured on the wicked. And one of those will be the great whore of Babylon, right? Edom, Rome, who will, as it says here, the cup is passed over to you too, so that you become drunk. She is drunk with the blood of the prophets, the righteous. She's drunk with the wine of her fornication, which is idolatry. And make yourself naked, in the sense that they will all die. They will be naked of their bodies and naked of every protection that Yahweh may have given them. They will be naked in judgment, meaning their sins won't be covered. So they will be punished. Right? So I hope that's clear. Also, Uz connects with Azazel. 21, as I always mention, these two words that mean rejoice and be glad connect with the last and the first, respectively here. You see how here, simchi, you see this word, if we take it here, and I get this shin and put it here, and this yud and put it here, we have Mashiach, right? So they killed the first and the last, and then it says, rejoice and be glad. They killed the last and the first. They killed Mashiach, so that's why they rejoice. But then they will have to pay. So be glad and rejoice, son of Edom. What else did I want to see here? Let me see. The cup, because it will pass the cup so that you drink it and become drunk and then be naked. Verse 22. Your crookedness has been completed, O daughter of Sion. Interesting how after all of this, which refers to, and it can be interpreted as the death of the first, the death of the last, and then the destruction of the great whore of Babylon. Finally, after that, your crookedness has been completed, O daughter of Sion. He no longer prolongs your exile. He shall punish your crookedness, O daughter of Edom. He shall uncover your sins. Look how it does like type of a mix between the daughter of Sion and the daughter of Edom, which can connect to the few and the many who are within Edom. Also, the true Yahudim and the false Yahudim. Your crookedness has been completed, O daughter of Sion. He no longer prolongs your exile, pretty much saying you will be brought back. Finally, because it has been completed, you will be brought back during the second Exodus, after the death of the two witnesses. He shall punish your crookedness, O daughter of Edom. So after the death of the two witnesses and the harvest of the few, then Yahweh will punish the crookedness of Edom, the great whore of Babylon. And he shall uncover her sins. For nowadays the world thinks that Edom, the great whore, is the virgin. They think is the mother church, as they call it. So Yahweh will show her evil, her crookedness. He shall uncover your sins. Why? Because she will become drunk and make herself naked. Therefore, her sins will be uncovered. Because they did not accept Mashiach, so they won't have a cover for their sins. That's how that chapter ends.